Welcome to another episode. This week I'm going to talk about exercise selection. And this follows on from last week. I did a video about getting back to basics, which was, going over the basic things that you should have in mind when constructing a training program. And exercise selection was one of them. It's not necessarily the most important part of a training program, but it is important, and I want to go over it this week. So there are numerous, things that you're going to consider. I've got them all laid out here, and I'm going to go through them one by one. The first thing is the effectiveness for your goals. So you want to choose exercises ideally that are going to be specific to your goals, whether that's a strength goal or a physique goal. If you want to get good at a particular exercise, you probably want to target that exercise. For example, if you want to improve a specific body part, you want to target that body part. You want to do a little bit extra for that body part, or you want to include exercises at least that will target that body part. And I want to be clear that I don't mean necessarily just including isolation exercises only, because that wouldn't really make sense, for some of the other things that we're going to talk about. But it does mean that if you had a physique goal and you want to improve a specific body part, you want to include some isolation exercises, and you also, of course, want to include some compound exercises as well. A bit of a combination would be ideal. You want to choose exercises that are suitable for your mechanics. And what I mean by that is things like limb length, your own muscle strengths and weaknesses, your personal current mobility. So if we're talking about limb length, a really good example is the deadlift. If you've got long arms and a short torso, you're generally going to be a little bit better at conventional deadlifts than somebody who has shorter arms and a longer torso. So that's an example of how that might play into what exercise you might choose, because you might just be better at doing conventional deadlifts. It probably makes sense to, that's more suitable for you. But at the same time, you also should be considering your own current strengths and weaknesses. So if you have really a really well developed lower body, so big quads, hamstrings, glutes, particularly in this case big quads, you're probably going to be reasonably good at sumo deadlifting. Of course, give or take your limb length and that type of thing, but big quads, usually you're good at squatting. It means you're probably going to be good at sumo deadlifting as well. So that type of thing might also play into choosing an exercise, which is interesting because if you're talking about your goals, sometimes you might want to target your weak points, whereas if you're choosing exercises that suit your mechanics, you're kind of going with your strong points. So it kind of all these things need to be considered, individually and also with each other, because it's not always simple. The next point is you want to choose exercises that don't cause or worsen injuries, basically that don't cause you pain. In general, if it hurts, I would say don't do it. And of course, within that, we have to consider, are you using correct form in the first place? Because if you're not using correct form and something's hurting, it might not necessarily be that that exercise doesn't suit you. It might just be that you're using bad form, and that's why you're hurting yourself. So if you are using good form, and you've had somebody that is knowledgeable check over it, and you're pretty sure that you're using good form, and the exercise is still hurting you, maybe drop that exercise. I'm not saying give up on anything that immediately hurts you, but if you are using good form and it's hurting you, I would say probably consider giving it a miss in your program. And of course, when it comes to previous injury, if you've previously hurt a particular part of your body and doing a specific exercise with good form then keeps flaring that up, like in my case, I have an L5-S1 disc protrusion in my lumbar spine, and when I do conventional deadlifts, the day afterwards I find that it always is a little bit flared up for a couple of days. And so with sumo deadlifts, I don't get the same thing because, you know, the shear forces change a little bit for the lumbar spine. When I'm doing a sumo deadlift, I'm more upright and so on. And so the sumo deadlift for me personally in that regard is just a better choice. So I would recommend, you know, take that into account as well. And of course, we should consider our own structure. Everybody is kind of the same, but we're also kind of a little different. For example, our you know, we have different length, you know, like I said before, limbs and bones, but the shape of the joints and that type of thing, the structure of them can be a little different. The attachment points can be a little different. And that can change, you know, how you might do your stances for particular exercises. The way in which the movement occurs might be a little bit different for you. So not everybody should do things exactly the same, and not everybody should do exactly the same exercises because of that. Enjoyment's a big factor. I think that, you know, if you enjoy the exercises that you're doing, you're going to be more likely to stick to the program. You're going to be more likely to put effort into the program and continue to progress. And I think that, you know, we of course want to do some exercises sometimes that we don't like that much because they might be very effective. But if you absolutely hate all the exercises that you're doing, you're not going to, you know, you're not going to make progress because you're just going to hate coming to the gym. So I would suggest that, you know, choose exercises that you like. Of course, sometimes with some exercises you might like them for a while, and then after a while they might become a bit tiresome. You need to have a bit of a break from them. So, you know, sometimes I wouldn't say mix it up all the time, but you might do an exercise for a block, and after that block you might start to, you know, I'm a bit sick of this exercise now. You might change it to another exercise for a while and come back to it later. And of course, the last thing is your ability to progress. And that's really important. You want to be able to progress and get better. You need to be able to improve so that you can move towards your goals. So you need to be able to measure what you're doing. You need to be able to either, in my opinion, add weight or add reps to the exercise gradually over time. Compound exercises are great because you're using multiple muscle groups and you're using more weight. It's going to be easier to add weight or add reps to the exercise. Isolation exercises, less so, simply because eventually you get to a point where, you know, you're only using, of course, with an isolation exercise, you're using minimal amounts of muscle, smaller muscle groups usually, and you know, it's more difficult to add those increments to the weight because they're a larger percentage of the total weight that you're lifting with an isolation exercise. Of course, I think you should include both in a training program. Both are beneficial. So that's about it for this video, guys. Thank you for listening again, and I'll be catching you guys in the next video. Please like and subscribe if you like the video as well. Cheers.